You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
This is a kind of a personal project slash hobby known as street epistemology. And I have a YouTube channel where I upload interviews that I do with people on the topic of epistemology. And, but so epistemology, it's a philosophical field that deals with knowledge claims, and so it deals with like the how question of how somebody arrived at whatever beliefs they hold to.
Okay.
And so I like to ask people about some belief they hold to, and ask you questions with like how questions. How did you get there? Type of stuff.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. What's your name?
Victoria.
Okay, Victoria. Nice to meet you. My name's Raul.
Oh, I like that name.
Thanks. All right, so Victoria, so can you identify some belief you hold to? I've talked to people about all types of stuff. Just to give you some examples. God beliefs, political beliefs, supernatural claims, paranormal beliefs, just anything at all, just something that you're fairly certain of and that is kind of foundational for you.
Okay, well, yeah, it definitely would be a belief in the Judeo-Christian God.
Okay. And what specifically, just that he exists, or?
Not only that he exists, but that he's good and intimately involved in our lives, and the creator of everything, and that he is a Trinity of God, Jesus, and Holy Spirit.
Okay, so you believe in the Judeo-Christian God, that he's good, that he's involved with everything, that he's created everything, and that he's a Trinity. Maybe we can pick one of those to kind of focus on. So those are the four. Okay. Let's say that God, the first one you mentioned is that you said he's good.
He's good.
We talk about that.
Okay.
So God, the claim that God is good. So why do you think that God is good?
From my personal experiences with him. So I had a really, really hard time for most of my life wrapping my head around there being one God and him being good, because there is so much evil in the world and pain and suffering and all of those things. But when I had a moment where I was sitting in church and I was very angry about being there. And this girl on the worship team made a reference to a TV show that I had been binge watching, and the reference just was really personal, and it was something that I had been thinking about and wanting and talking to God about, but in the sense that I didn't think that anyone was listening, you know. Felt like I was just more talking to myself or whatever. And so I responded to that by like asking for prayer or whatever. And that was the moment I had someone come, and I'd never been at this church before. I'd never met any of these people before, and they were telling me things about my life and my experiences that they could not have otherwise known. And one guy told me that that moment was my moment to accept God for myself, because he saw a vision of an IV needle of labeled religion being force-fed into my arm my whole life. And God was telling him that was my moment to accept it. And so I did, and from that moment forward, just in a sense of like being conscious of him there and his presence, and the fact that he wanted to pursue me and reach me and show me that he was real, brought me into more experiences of where he's done good things. He's shown me things about people. I was able to help them and speak encouragement to them, and heal me of a mental disorder and things along those lines. So it's been very supernatural experiences, and I mean, I know there's a lot of different arguments against them, but as far as the how, it's just simply my personal experience.
So you had this personal experience where you were struggling with the idea of suffering in the world, and one time you were in church, kind of angry, and somebody made a reference to a show that you happened to have been watching, and on top of that, people there mentioned a bunch of stuff about you that otherwise they wouldn't have known, and somebody invited you to accept God into your life. Okay. Is there any personal experience that you think would lead somebody to the conclusion, to the opposite conclusion. So if personal experience for you led you to therefore God is good, is it possible for that same methodology, so to speak, of personal experience to lead somebody to the opposite conclusion?
Yeah, because I was totally on the opposite conclusion before that. I had experiences where I was having panic attacks, and I would ask, I'd be like, God, if you don't make it stop. And it didn't stop right away. Or things such as that, or just seeing a person in your family die, or, not feeling like your prayers are answered, or that if there was anything out there, he's uninvolved. That was my attitude before these things. So I definitely could see that.
Okay. So how do we determine which personal experience is leading to the right conclusion? If one person, in your case, has a personal experience that God is good, and then another person has also personal experience, this time that God is not good, how do we know which personal experience to trust as leading to the right conclusion?
You don't.
Okay.
I'm not going to pretend like I have an answer. It's just the concept of faith, I suppose, and trust in and of itself. When we trust another person, there's always the sense that they could betray our trust or let our trust down. So trusting in anything, be it a person, be it a deity, be it your dog. I mean, they can betray that. So.
Okay. And so when you say faith, you mean like trusting in God, even when your experience maybe doesn't lead you to the conclusion that God is good?
Yeah. I would say that faith is more of holding on to a belief system even when things seemingly contradict externally due to an internal state.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So believing something even though the evidence seems to contradict it.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
So
if that's how you're defining faith,
I know it sounds irrational.
well, what I'm wondering is, like, how would somebody come to the conclusion that they're wrong? Like, let's say theoretically, you were wrong about this belief. Let's say let's say God existed and He was not good. But because you have the attitude of I'm going to hold on to this belief no matter what I see, how would that lead you to the realization that you're actually not correct concerning your belief?
I think there would have to be a change in an internal state. Because for me at this point, even when things are, although I've had a lot of circumstances on the external to back it up, it's really an internal state of just equilibrium and peace, and feeling like God helps me come to conclusions that I can't come to in my rational mind. That otherwise I just stay spinning in circles on. And so it's really just like this internal dialogue that keeps me there. So I guess for it to change, that internal dialogue would have to shift. And I suppose that an external circumstance could cause that shift, but
I'm wondering how we verify our internal dialogue. And so in your case, your internal dialogue is like a sense of peace. How do we verify that our internal dialogue is, that it's leading us to accurate conclusions? Is there a way to verify it at all?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not 100%, but I would say at least for me, a good way to try to verify your internal dialogue is to spend people who support, and to spend time with people who contradict your internal dialogue. So to have this variety of input and mindsets, because if your internal dialogue isn't swayed by others who contradict it, but rather is more naturally, I guess we're all more naturally drawn to people with the same mindset as us, so not really a natural drawing to them, but just has a kind of a steadfastness, I suppose, then that it would be evidence that you're either really dogmatic or you're on the right track.
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying the way we would verify whether or not our internal dialogue is leading us to accurate conclusions is by spending time with people, I guess, who disagree with us.
Yeah. Yeah. And being open-minded to what they say.
Mm-hmm.
Not spending time with them with the intent of dissuading them, but just the intent of learning from them.
I'm wondering if you do that. Let's say you spend time with people who have different beliefs than you. How is being open-minded to what they have to say consistent with, like what you said earlier, as far as maintaining your belief in spite of the evidence? Like, because if you're determined to maintain your belief in spite of any disconfirming evidence, wouldn't like people who disagree with you have just that disconfirming evidence? And
yeah, but then again, it all comes back to that personal experience thing. And as far as theology goes, we have apologetics and people who dig up that evidence that there is Jesus and he is who he says he is, and then we have arguments on either side. So it's such a theoretical thing that I think it's for a lot of people, that I think it's possible to be open to another person's argument and be like, yeah, you could be right, and then go back, look at their argument, think about their argument, maybe think about a counter argument, and just kind of introspect and come to that conclusion. So I think it is possible.
What would disconfirm your belief that God is good? What would convince you otherwise?
I haven't encountered it yet.
Okay.
I can't say, honestly. Maybe just don't know.
Okay. All right, Victoria, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.